Beyond the buzzer, inside the game, this is Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
Hey, happy Friday to you, July 24th, Sports IQ. This is Larry Smith. We've got a great show coming up. We're going to hear from several SEC coaches as media days wrapping up down there in Tampa. We'll be doing a lot of college football here next couple of weeks to kind of get you ready for the big season. Also, Matt Snyder joining us from CBS Sports, talking a little baseball. Past the All-Star break, trade deadline is coming next week. Love getting Matt's insights on all things MLB. If today is your birthday, happy birthday. Kyle Kuzma, the NBA forward, is 31. Rick Fox, the former NBA player turned Bahamian politician, is 57. Barry Bonds, home run king, is 62. Kevin Butler, who kicked his way for the Bears to a Super Bowl ring back in 1986, he is 64 years old. The guy Butler kicked against, former Patriots quarterback Steve Grogan, he turned 73 today. If you were born on this day, you share a birthday with Willie Davis, the Pro Football Hall of Famer, born in 1934, the Packers great, and former Basketball Hall of Famer Walt Bellamy. Actually, he's not a former Hall of Famer, former star. He is a Hall of Famer. Walt Bellamy, born on this day in 1939. You know who else has a birthday today? Nick Nurse, head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers, turns 59 years old. And what a present for him, because for the first time ever, LeBron James has chosen to play for a veteran NBA coach who has an NBA championship ring, nonetheless. Nick Nurse won a title with Toronto back in 2019. He now gets to coach LeBron. James ending all that speculation by agreeing to a 2-year, $8 million deal with Philly in what he's calling his last decision. Now, the 76ers last won the NBA championship back in 1983. Dr. J, the star of that team. James, NBA record 24th season this year, and he joins a lot of young talent there in Philadelphia. The newly acquired former Boston Celtics star Jaylen Brown, also Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, a young scorer. Lots of young talent there, but also keep this in mind, LeBron loves the attention. Philadelphia is the largest East Coast TV market after New York City. So LeBron to the Sixers, how does that change things in the East? Well, the Sixers reached the second round this past spring, before losing to eventual NBA champion New York. We'll see what happens there. Baseball, Ronald Acuña Jr. Off the injured list possibly and ready to return to the Braves Friday night for a series in Baltimore. He has been out with a hamstring injury since June 9th, missed 15 games back in May. The 2023 National League Most Valuable Player. What does he mean to this Atlanta team? Well, the Braves are 37-16 with him in the lineup, 23-26 without. Tarik Skubal says he wants to finish his season in Detroit, telling reporters on Thursday, quote, "I think we have a chance to win the World Series." The 29-year-old will get to start against Kansas City Friday night. Could that be his last for the Tigers? Well, again, he's a two-time Cy Young Award winner who, again, would be heavily sought after in the free agent market, or in the trade market, that is, if that is still a chance. But Detroit, despite having a disappointing season, they are still in the hunt. And we'll talk to Matt Snyder about all things baseball here again in just a moment. WNBA, it's the All-Star Weekend in Chicago. They've got the skills competition at Wintrust Arena Friday night, the All-Star game coming up on Saturday. But meanwhile, ESPN has a report out that there is some growing concern among stakeholders that Kathy Engelbert is not the right person to lead this league moving forward. In fact, many feel that 2026 will be her last in overseeing the WNBA. Engelbert has a spectacular resume, came after an executive career that included a stop leading Deloitte & Touche. She just engineered this latest CBA, massive media deals all over the board, great expansion. But will she be around after this season? Well, time will tell. Time now for today's moment of awe. And it was one of the great moments in sports history that doesn't get talked about. And it happened not that long ago. The 1996 Olympics in Atlanta, remembered by some as the disposable Olympics because city leaders used temporary structures for buildings that didn't have a use beyond the Summer Games. It was really a smart move. They had no financial future obligations for empty buildings, as we have seen in other Olympic cities. Also known for Dream Team 2, Michael Johnson. But on this day at the old Georgia Dome, it was gymnastics. as the U.S. women's team, dubbed the Magnificent Seven, trailed Russia entering the final day of the competition. Kerri Strug injured her ankle on the first attempt at the vault, and then with the gold medal on the line, she limped her way back onto the floor and nailed her second attempt. Unable to walk out to the medal ceremony, Coach Bella Caroli carried her from the backstaging area to the podium. I was in the crowd that day, and I will tell you there was not a dry eye in the place. Kerri Strug's heroic vault 30 years ago this week gets our moment of awe.
You're listening to Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
Sports IQ with Larry Smith continues right now. Matt Snyder, friend of the show, joining us once again, CBS Sports. Matt, good to see you. We are past the All-Star break now, about to approach the dog days. Let me first start with the trade deadline coming up. What are you hearing in terms of maybe a possible, maybe a couple of big moves that you think may be in the offing right now?
What we're hearing mostly is everybody is in wait and see mode because so many teams are kind of on the precipice or the fringe of contention. And, among those teams would be the Detroit Tigers. And it starts right now with Tarik Skubal. And heading into Friday, the Tigers are 4 games out of a playoff spot. That seems like you're in contention. But there's 3 teams in between them and the last wild card. And, if they lose, let's say 3 in a row, all of a sudden now they're out of it. So it's really, I guess I would say frustrating because you don't know. We have about 6 or 7 teams right now that we're sure are sellers, and that's it, which means you've got 20 plus buyers. And if the Tigers decide that they want to keep Skubal, they're probably going to buy, because if you're going to go for it with 2 months left with Tarik Skubal, then you should go all in and try to buy as much as you can, and you should try to win it all. So it's a tricky deadline. One of the teams that we know will be very active and has pieces to sell is the Mets. Freddie Peralta, Clay Holmes from the rotation, a few bullpen pieces. We know the Mets will be active, but past that, and it's not just the Tigers. You talk about the Twins with Joe Ryan and Ryan Jeffers, for example. They're right there. They're 2.5 games out of a wild card spot, but they don't feel like a playoff team. So it's going to be a very hectic 9 days here.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of answered a little bit right there. And so not to pour salt in the wound, but potentially, how is this, the expansion of the playoffs has created this, right? Where,
yes,
a few years ago, there were only, I remember back when there were, 2 teams that got in and then 4 teams.
Yeah.
How has that changed your job? Like you said, 10 years ago, it's kind of cut and dried right now in terms of, who's in the mix and who's not. To your point right now, almost everyone still mathematically has a shot. How has that changed? You kind of alluded to it, how you approach this.
Generally speaking, I like it because more fan bases have an opportunity to be excited and to stay into baseball into September. And that's always good. You want more fan bases to have a playoff caliber team, to be rooting for these playoff teams. And I like more fan bases being involved, especially because baseball is such a regional sport anymore. National broadcasts, I feel like not that many people watch them as compared to, for example, NFL. I feel like everybody watches Sunday Night Football. Everybody. In baseball, I feel like most people pretty much just watch their own favorite team, and that's about it. So when more teams fall out of it, more fans check out by September and then move on to football season, for example. So I like that more fan bases stay attuned to baseball and stay into it. It messes with the trade deadline a little bit, which it's a small thing. It's only a couple weeks. And the other aspect, I guess, is when I look at the American League right now, and I don't think this is necessarily a function of the expanded playoff field. It's just where we are with the American League right now, and it's cyclical. Sometimes we would have a league that's really, really strong with a few really, really great teams. It's a pretty mediocre league right now. And you look at, I keep saying it's so wide open because when I look at the Rays, who are the number 1 seed in the American League right now, they're not that great. And you look at the Yankees are the second best team by a record. man, they've been bad for 6 weeks right now. And then you get to third, White Sox are like very fun story. Very, very fun story. I like their offense with Montgomery and Murakami and Vargas, but are they really scaring anybody? I don't think so. It's a really mediocre league.
Yeah, and I think we might have maybe in the offseason you might have alluded to that maybe. And if I'm not mistaken, it was sort of like looking ahead saying, who's going to be the team to jump out? And here we are almost to August, and nobody has jumped out, to your point. You mentioned the American League in the East is one. I kind of want to talk about the Boston Red Sox just a bit. This huge run that has put them in contention. If you talked about the Red Sox a month ago, they're one of those teams, I mean, that they would be a seller. Now, because of this huge run that tied a record set back in 1946 for longest win streak in franchise history, they're right there in the mix of things, not just for a wild card, but potentially to win the division.
It's funny because that was one of the teams that we were focusing on with Sonny Gray and Aroldis Chapman, and maybe even further than that. But this is one of those teams that you're sure is going to be a seller. In 1 month, 20-3. All of a sudden, they're right there in the playoff mix. And that's, again, that goes to how mediocre the league is and the expanded playoffs. They jumped right back into the things. I mean, and it's a great run, but there's still only 3 games over 500. But that's good enough to be one of the best teams in the league. And now you're thinking about, okay, what can they buy? Are they going to go out and get Luis Arraez? Are they going to get something better? Is Garrett Crochet going to come back? Is Roman Anthony going to come back? They could well make a run and win the American League. And that was a team that was buried a month ago. Yeah, it's, again, a function of the mediocrity of the league and the expanded playoff field, but quite a run. Really, really fun.
Yeah, talking with Matt Snyder here, CBS Sports, a little baseball talk. And it's fun stuff. I'm going to kind of bounce around here a little bit. So from a team that maybe right now is in the mix to a team you just mentioned, definitely is not. Boy, money does not buy you happiness if you are with the New York Mets. You know where I was going already before I said this. Yeah. If you're the Mets, I mean, you can't just write checks, right? I mean, now you got to get rid of some of this high price talent probably and see what pieces you can get for it to build for 2027 and moving on. What do you do if you're the Mets and you make some really terrible decisions that just did not come together from day one for them?
Yeah, if you're David Stearns, you're trying to save your job, frankly. I mean, I know he took over before the 2024 season and they went to the NLCS, but those were all guys that were holdovers from the previous front office. And he's done some things. Look, they collapsed and they missed the playoffs last year, but this past offseason was pretty radical for a team with a winning record and this high of a payroll. You let Pete Alonso walk, who had been probably the face of the franchise for multiple years, at least since 2020. And you let Pete Alonso walk. You replaced him with a second baseman in Jorge Polanco, who is very injury prone, and he went down. You go out and you sign Bo Bichette to move him positions to third base. You trade Brandon Nimmo to get him off the books, but you bring Marcus Semien on. You go out and you get Luis Robert, who is very injury prone. You go out and you trade for Freddie Peralta. He did a lot of stuff this offseason, and almost none of it worked at all. And if you're Steve Cohen, you're saying, I've got the top payroll in baseball right now. What am I paying you for? So I feel like it's a big trade deadline and it's a big coming off season for David Stearns here. What do? I kind of feel like you sell at the margins because there are still good pieces here. The Semien deal, that was a disaster, and you can let Luis Robert walk. You've got Benj and AJ Ewing for the outfield moving forward, along with Juan Soto, obviously, and the talk about Francisco Lindor trading him, I'm not with that at all. You don't sell low on a guy like Lindor. He's only in his age 32 season. I still think he has several good years left. I think the injuries wrecked him this season. I think you go into next year and you say, we've got Lindor, Soto, Bichette as our 1, 2, 3 in the order. And that's a very, very good 1, 2, 3. And you get what you can get for Freddie Peralta, for Clay Holmes, several bullpen pieces. And then you try to revamp the rotation around Nolan McLean and Christian Scott. They have enough good pieces here. It's still a tall order, but kind of feel like this year was pretty catastrophic for many reasons, and some of this can be salvaged.
Yeah. Well, okay, so there's hope there, just maybe not 2026.
Yeah. No, none for this season.
Yeah, exactly. I want to stay in the NL East, and I think one of the races I'm really looking forward to watching here in the final 2 months is between Atlanta and Philadelphia. Both teams coming up. I mean, obviously, both have fresh managers from a year ago. Phillies from April, and it feels like that's when it's going to come down to those two teams, and a fun September to see who comes out on top.
Absolutely. With the Braves, I don't worry about the offense because they have a lot of good pieces there, and they have started to hit again since their little swoon there in late June, early July. And you're getting Ronald Acuña Jr. back anyway. So I think their offense is going to be great down the stretch. I think the bullpen is going to be perfectly fine once Robert Suarez comes back with Iglesias there at the back end. The issue is going to be the rotation behind Chris Sale. So is Bryce Elder going to bounce back? Are you going to get anything at all? I don't think much from Spencer Strider and Spencer Schwellenbach as they both rehab from injuries. It might be a lost season there. So it's going to come down to who do you add at the trade deadline? And is it going to be somebody like Tarik Skubal? Now all of a sudden you have a pair of aces with Sale and Skubal. Or is it going to be somebody lesser like Freddie Peralta or Clay Holmes if the Mets trade within the division? I'm very interested to see what the Braves do, but I know they desperately need somebody else as a frontline starter alongside Chris Sale. And then you look at the Phillies, and it's the opposite side. They're one of the few teams that really needs another bat. The offense is so top heavy with Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber, Brandon Marsh, a little bit maybe Trey Turner. Every once in a while, Alec Boehm shows up and hits a home run. They could use another big bat. Is it going to be somebody in the outfield, a corner outfielder, as Adolis Garcia went down for the season? You look at that team, the rotation with Wheeler, Christopher Sanchez, Jesus Luzardo, really, really good rotation. Duran at the back end of the bullpen. They have pieces where you could see them making a deep run in the playoffs again. I think the Braves are probably going to hold off the Phillies, but it's going to be such a fun race. And I think the Phillies are better set up, at least at this point, for the playoffs. Now, we'll see once the dust settles from the trade deadline.
Right. Yeah, who moves? But it's a game of chess that's always ongoing. The National League, Dodgers, obviously two-time defending champs, and they're doing what Dodgers do. Can the Brewers catch them? Can they beat them in October if it comes down to that?
I'm worried about the Kyle Harrison forearm issue right now, because one of the things that I loved about the Brewers early in the season was you had what looked like a pair of aces and Jacob Misiorowski and Kyle Harrison. They're kind of easing back on Misiorowski's workload right now with the eyes on the postseason. He's a legit bona fide ace. He's not going anywhere. Where's that number two guy? As I just talked about with the Braves, if you could add Skubal to Sale, can the Brewers get another frontline starter there to go with Misiorowski? They're so good at developing their pitchers. Anybody they bring up looks great, but I feel like you need another ace to go side by side with Misiorowski in the playoffs, because it caught up with the Brewers last year in the playoffs when they didn't have that, and Misiorowski wasn't a bona fide ace yet last year. But when you look at that series against the Dodgers, it was the starting pitching with Snell and Glasnow and Ohtani and, of course, Yamamoto in that series, which was a Brewers. They got swept by the Dodgers in the NLCS. Can they stand toe-to-toe with aces with the Dodgers? And I think that's what the Brewers need to be looking at as they get closer to the trade deadline.
Yeah, like I said, we'll see what moves they make. I'd be remiss if I had you on the show and didn't get into the CBA talks. We're out of the All-Star break. I don't think any of us expected any developments in mid-July, and we did not get any. What are you hearing right now on your end?
They're both just publicly airing all their moves and all their offers, which aren't really real offers just yet. I'm frustrated with how they're doing it publicly. Like they're trying to win over the public in anticipation of a shutdown, and that makes me worried. I still ultimately think that both sides know there's too much at stake and we cannot afford a shutdown, and that they will eventually come to a deal. But I think it's going to be a long and ugly offseason, probably similar to what we had last time. When I believe it bled into March, and then we had to push back the season by like a week or so. I think it's going to be similar to that, but I think that a deal will get done eventually. I know the hot button topic is a salary cap, and I'm going to say the players win this one and avoid one. If there is something that's put in place, I will say that it will still be a big discrepancy. And you're already seeing, like, one of the things the owners floated, they had the salary floor at 140 million and a salary cap at like 270 or something like that. That's still a pretty big discrepancy. So, yeah, if there's anything put in, I still think it will be relatively player friendly compared to the other major sports leagues.
Okay, interesting. One thing that we thought on the show was when MLB last week released the 2027 schedule, the start date seemed really early, and we were wondering if that's kind of an artificial start date early.
So they could absorb a delay a little bit. Yeah, I can totally see that. 100%.
Yeah. Matt, listen, we've taken enough of your time. Always good to talk with you, my friend. Have a great weekend, and I can't wait to talk to you soon.
All right, man. Take care.
I appreciate it. Matt Snyder joining us once again. CBS Sports talking MLB. Great thoughts there. Listen, if you're a baseball fan, he's excited for you that this may actually come out to where you actually do have a nearly complete 2027 season. And hopefully, if we read into his tea leaves or the tea leaves that he's reading, we'll be okay in 2027. Time will tell. Fingers crossed. Rosary beads in hand. There's a rabbit's foot. Saw 4-leaf clover. All the things. All right. More to come. Stay with us. Welcome back here to the show. Great to talk once again with Matt Snyder there, CBS Sports. Matt's been on the show before and love his insights. As you know, if you listen to the show on a regular basis, you know we're about just great conversation. We're not screaming, yelling, cursing, calling names, whatever. It's people who are much smarter than me and maybe smarter than you. I don't know who you are, but that's just kind of where we are. Love having him on. He fits that mold, and so we get excited every time he spends a few minutes with us. We were talking yesterday about it's talk time, right, in college football. It is time for media days with all the conferences. I will say this: watching this week it's the SEC, next week it's the Big Ten, the two big conferences, of course, in college football. Let me just say this: these guys come clean at the podium. Have you noticed that? I mean, did you see Lane Kiffin support? There's not a guy up there that's and I you guys know I'm a news anchor, longtime sports anchor, CNN. Doing this, getting close to 40 years now. Here in a couple of years, I'll hit that mark. And I'm a guy who I love clothes. Okay, I've got a lot of suits, a lot of ties. I mix them up, whatever. I'm always noticing appearances, and it's just kind of my thing. It's just what I do. These guys are chef's kiss, man. They are bringing it. I don't know if they've got their stylists, their wives helping them, somebody in the office. I don't know what's going on, but man, they're all looking smooth, every single one of them. But listen, aside from the sartorial splendor, we want to get into kind of some of the nitty gritty, and we want to play. It's a chunk of Greg Sankey's press conference, his kind of State of the Union, if you will, State of the Conference that he spoke earlier this week. He's the SEC commissioner, and he addressed obviously a number of things. And they're all pretty big. Obviously, you just heard about. You may have read that for college sports, this new college sports legislation going through Congress, it is not going to be voted on anytime soon. So that's not going to happen. He discussed that legislation, the pros and cons with that. Also, a lot of buzz in the offseason about expanding the college football playoff, and also talked about the new 9-game conference schedule there in the SEC. Here's Greg Sankey and a portion of his remarks at the SEC Media Days in Tampa.
That Senate bill contains many provisions that we support and we think are both healthy for college athletics and the participants in college athletics. And just quickly, that includes enhanced expectations for student-athlete health and safety, supporting educational opportunities, providing scholarship protections, overseeing agent activity, increasing the participation of our student-athletes in governance, which we as a conference have led in that area for years and actually decades, and those national standards of which I spoke, particularly in eligibility and transfers. We support the effort behind the Protect College Sports Act. However, we believe changes to the act are necessary to make it most effective. And the changes we've suggested are both achievable and reasonable, and we're committed to working with Congress to move the legislation across the finish line. There are 4 principles that we believe should guide this legislative effort at this time. The first is about those national standards, which must be enforceable. If Congress establishes national rules, individuals and organizations who comply with those rules should not be subject to litigation simply for following the law. Without meaningful legal protections, we risk the continuing cycle of uncertainty that has been part of our challenge in college athletics in recent years. Second, the framework should be truly national. The legislation moves us in the right direction, but it should more fully replace the growing patchwork of state laws that are conflicting and create competitive differences based upon state borders. Remember that quote from our student athletes. We just want to know that others are held to the same standards. Third, transparency and accountability are essential. Rules governing name, image, and likeness activity are only effective if they can be enforced. And that requires meaningful transparency so everyone operates under the same expectations and the same level of accountability. Without it, loopholes undermine that competitive fairness expectation. And then fourth and finally, the legislation should treat similarly situated organizations equally while preserving institutional choice. Whether discussing conference structure or media rights, federal law should establish fair and consistent standards, not different rules for different organizations, and should preserve the voluntary decision-making rather than mandating outcomes. The areas of concern that we've identified, and every time I write a memo on this, I find it posted soon on social media, so we offered 10 common sense suggestions that track on those 4 principles. Those 10 concepts are not SEC issues. Those are changes that we believe benefit all of college athletics in providing a national solution. Our recommendations are intended to help Congress achieve what our student athletes, our universities, and our fans desire, that one national framework with meaningful protections for student athletes, enforceable rules, fair competition, and providing long-term stability. If Congress is going to act, and again, I believe it should for the reasons identified, we have one opportunity to get this legislation right. If Congress passes a bill and it's signed into law, we won't be returning to DC in a year or two asking and receiving help to correct the gaps that exist. That's why it's important that these common sense areas be addressed now before the bill becomes law. But for us, federal legislation is only one part of our responsibility. The same principles that we talk about guiding congressional decision-making should also guide us every day. Over the past year, there's been considerable discussion about the format of the college football playoff. In fact, if I'm honest, I'd suggest that since the college football playoff was created, there's been considerable discussion about the future format of the college football playoff. That helps you fill space, right? Those conversations are important, but our approach has remained consistent. We're not necessarily interested in finding the easiest path. We are focused on finding the right path for college football. Leadership sometimes is not about having an immediate answer. Leadership is about asking the right questions before making decisions that shape our future. And some decisions are so important that taking the time needed to let the important questions be answered is the right step. And the need to have the right information should properly inform our decisions. And some of those important questions that remain for us is how do we preserve and build the value of the regular season? That is a judgment-based answer that we continue to consider and research. We also need to know what is the actual interest from fans and from media entities in an expanded college football playoff. How do we respect the academic calendar and respect the well-being of our student athletes? When we went from 4 to 12, those questions were answered during the consideration process. How do we create a postseason that rewards excellence while strengthening the long-term future of the sport and providing postseason competitive opportunities that are meaningful? And I'm certain to be asked the last one, what happens to conference championship games in the sport of football if the playoff expands further? Those questions and others rightfully do and should guide our conversations, and each deserves thoughtful answers, not assumptions, and not incomplete information. But we do need to bring this conversation to conclusion in short order so we can move on and focus on the future of the game. This same principle-based decision-making helped guide the Southeastern Conference when considering a 9-game football schedule, which begins this season. Now, we and I recognize that a 9-game Southeastern Conference football schedule, coupled with our expectation that we maintain a high-quality non-conference opponent, creates one of the most, in fact, I'm going to scratch what I wrote, it creates, without question, the most demanding sets of football schedules in all of college football. But these decisions were made after years of thoughtful discussion, careful analysis, and spirited debate, which led us to the conclusion that the 9-game schedule was appropriate. And the 9-game schedule reflects confidence in our universities, our student athletes, and in our football programs. It preserves great rivalries, historic rivalries, many of which are played every year. It creates more compelling conference matchups and reinforces our long-standing commitment to competitive excellence. When you look at our schedule, no one has created the kind of weekly competition that exists in the Southeastern Conference. It's competition that our fans will experience every week because we believe we're the best conference in college football. And if so, we should also embrace the challenges with a difficult and challenging conference schedule, the best schedule in college football. It will challenge our teams, it will prepare them for the highest level of competition, and reflects who we are as a conference.
That was Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, again, talking about a lot of different things. I love the fact, again, that they're at a 9-game conference schedule like the other conferences. I think that's a step towards making things equal across the board. It's such a great conference, and I love the fact that we're going to have another SEC versus SEC matchup. Look, I know the loser of this, those are those teams that look for that one-time big payday of $1 million to have your team come into the Coliseum and pretend you're the Christians, getting eaten by the Lions. I get that. That hurts those schools. I understand. But I think for college football, this is a good thing that they're now playing 9 conference games. Okay, we'll hear more from some coaches coming up. On the way, conversation, we'll hear something from Kalen DeBoer, the Alabama coach, also Steve Sarkisian, talk about Arch Manning, Mike Elko, Texas A&M, and the money down there, the Aggies program. Also, Pete Golding and what he thinks about his former boss, Lane Kiffin. It's all next to the Sports IQ. Welcome back here to the show. A little talking more SEC and going down to media days and hearing a few comments. Kalen DeBoer is now entering year 3 at Alabama, a 10-win season, 16 out of 17 years, including 2025. Of course, 6 titles under the now retired legend Nick Saban. Coach DeBoer talking about his Crimson Tide here in 2026.
Hey, Coach. EG from Yale, Alabama. You mentioned that continuity on your staff. How does that set you up for success this season from a coordinating perspective and beyond the quarterback battle? What have you found yourself spending the most time on this offseason?
Yeah, I think just familiarity is so important. Just being around here this morning and doing different interviews, year 3 versus years 2, but especially versus year 1. And any time you have more familiarity, you understand who's around you, you understand the areas that are strengths, you understand the areas that are weaknesses. And so that continuity on our coaching staff is critical. It trickles down. You're not just coaching the coaches, but really what matters is what the players learn and what the players know. And so our coaching staff being on the same page, everyone gelling at the leadership level, at the coaching staff, will certainly trickle down and lead to that feeling of confidence, trust, and belief that you need amongst your players, which is the most important.
Okay, we're going to stay on this front row.
Nick Kelly, AL.com. Kalen, you've got a lot of new faces on the offensive line. Did you expect that change to lead to improvement from that group?
We lost some good players that got obviously first-round draft picks, and like Caden Proctor, Parker Brailsford, some good players, some great players, that we're certainly going to miss. But I am excited about the guys that either return, Michael Carroll, who took a lot of snaps for us. Will Sanders has taken a lot of snaps for us. There's some guys that are within our program, like a Jackson Lloyd. We brought in some players that have been at other places, that have been on the football field, in the conference, outside the conference. What I appreciate about the guys who have come in, I guess really the whole unit as a whole, is how open they've been to just being coached, being taught, wanting to come together, feeding off of the energy or the talk around, it being an area that needs to be improved, but just focusing on really what they can control and not making it more than what it needs to be, but also understanding the urgency that needs to happen to be an elite group. I think, last year we had a number of guys that were in the mix, in the rotation. I think a lot of it's always, there's a piece to it where we were trying to find the right combinations, but there was also a lot of times where it was out of necessity, injuries and other, where we needed to make those changes. And hopefully we can find a group here in fall camp that really gels well together, is the best unit as a whole. When communication is made, it's understood and it's communicated at a high level, to where everyone's on the same page. We can go out there and do their jobs. I think there's the physical tools across the board in our football team, but your question regarding offensive line, those physical tools are there. We have a younger group. But again, I think that leads to the eagerness that these guys have and the willingness to be coached, to be pushed, and that humility that they have, I think can certainly be seen in the work that they've been put in.
That was Kalen DeBoer, again, getting ready for year 3 down in Tuscaloosa. Meanwhile, over in Texas, Steve Sarkisian, the one-time Alabama assistant, now in his 6th year as head coach there at the Longhorns. 9-3 regular season last year. They won their bowl game, but controversial, missed out on playoffs after getting in the year 1 of the expanded playoffs in 2025. This is Arch Manning's 2nd year as the full-time starter at quarterback. Talking about, this is Coach Sark talking about just his development and how much he has grown as a player entering this 2026 season.
Hey, Steve. Cedric Golden, Austin American Statesman. Arch Manning, the name on the back of his jersey brings as much notoriety as the one on the front. How did the growing pains of last season, how would that benefit him this year?
Yeah, I'd like to touch on that. Arch Manning a year ago wasn't on social media or on television saying, I'm going to be the first pick of the draft. He wasn't on television saying, I'm going to win the Heisman Trophy. All he did was work really hard. All he did was try to be the best teammate he can be. And then we had some failures as a team. He didn't play to the way of what he was capable of playing. And then those same people that were saying that about him wanted to criticize and demean him almost for letting them down because he didn't live up to what they thought he was going to be. Very interesting concept right there. And I think the way of what he got put through probably would have melted or destroyed 99% of people in his shoes. All he did was stay consistent to true to who he was, which continue to work hard, continue to be a great teammate, try to get better, and he did. And he came out and played the second half of the season at a really high level. We go 7-1. He's got 20 touchdowns, only 2 turnovers. He's a fantastic player at the end of the year. But he didn't go back on social media and say, I told you so. And all he's done this year is continue to work hard again. And so there's always going to be outside opinions of that guy. And that comes with the territory, and he understands that. But I think he learned a lot about himself last year, about dealing with adversity and overcoming. And I think he learned a lot about his teammates and the support that they gave him, and them recognizing the mental and physical toughness that he has to play the position, to be their leader. And I think that he's grown into a great leader for us. And so I'm very proud of Arch for the way he's carried himself, the way he represents the University of Texas. I think right now he's a very dangerous player, because he learned a lot from last season, and he's surrounded by some good players. And I think that he's a guy that's poised for a heck of a season.
Steve Sarkisian talking to star quarterback Arch Manning there. Meanwhile, across the state, Texas A&M, Mike Elko in his third year there in College Station, 11-2 last year, made the college football playoff, and then lost to Miami in that just disastrous game, all those missed field goals. So listen, Texas A&M, deep pockets down in the heart of it. They spent reportedly, the word is on the street, $1 million for kicker David Alano to bring him in, one of the top kickers in high school, was a clutch player for Illinois, delivered several game-winning kicks there. And so Elko was asked the question about NIL and how they handle things at A&M.
A&M has quite a nice NIL operation going, but institutionally, across all the sports, is NIL money earmarked for specific sports, or is it general across the whole athletic department? And does basketball and women's sports, do they have their own Derek Millers who kind of solicit for those sports?
Wow, that's a deep question. First, when you said NIL, I thought we were talking about soccer for a second. Yeah, I think we have tried to do and be a very strategic program and athletic department in the NIL era. I think as we move forward, it's not lost the impact that NIL has in acquiring talent. And not that you want to be in the world of being at the highest end or buying people, so to speak, but the value that you're able to provide your student athletes, it enables you to retain and attract some of the best talent. And so it's not lost the impact that NIL has. And so I think we've just tried to be extremely strategic, not only as a football program, but as an athletic department, and how to navigate that space as we move forward. Related to other programs within our university, I wouldn't want to comment on how they run their program. Certainly Derek Miller for us does a really, really good job of partnering with our athletic department to make sure that we're funding things at the level we need to be able to compete and be successful.
Mike Elko talking there. Meanwhile, maybe no bigger story during the college football playoffs than that of Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin leading the team to an 11-1 record, and then leaving to go play for or to go coach conference rival LSU, right? I mean, not just any school, but LSU. When you're Ole Miss, I mean, one of the greatest rivals that you have. Pete Golding comes in, goes 2-1, and now begins his first full year talking about his relationship with Lane Kiffin, and also later getting a question about tampering. Let's listen in on that.
Pete, Michael Casa with the Daily Journal. This one might have a complicated answer, but what is your relationship like with Lane right now?
Look, I get this everywhere we go. So we're on our caravan tour right now with Ole Miss, and we go every Tuesday and Thursday and take a couple players and go around the country. So we go Q&A with everybody. So it's everybody's telling me how you really feel about them. They're like this intimate, environment. But Lane and I are good. So I did not know Coach Kiffin prior to taking the Ole Miss job. I think everybody just assumes Alabama. I wasn't at Alabama when Coach Kiffin was, So I didn't come to Ole Miss because of Coach Kiffin. I came to Ole Miss to be at Ole Miss to raise 3 kids. So, our relationship really grew in those 3.5 years, and he did a lot for me. And I was very, very appreciative of how he treated me and my family and learned a lot from him. So I have no ill will towards Coach Kiffin. He texts me on a regular basis, and there's certain things that we'll talk about, and there are certain things that we don't talk about. He's very competitive, just like I'm very competitive. right? And so obviously a lot of this went a different direction when now he had a new job with new responsibilities, and he's going to be super competitive to be the best that he can at that job, right? Which is his job. And so I can separate the two. I know some people can't. I tell a lot of these people, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I don't care. All right. Like I told an Ole Miss group the other day at 21, I said, all right, in 2021, if you said you could look in 2025 and you're about to be 11-1 and go to the playoff, would you take it if your coach was leaving? They're like, hell yeah. I was like, you would. Everybody won from it. It's okay. Keith, like you made a great hire. You did a great job. Every place isn't for everybody. That's coaches, that's players, that's your job, that's everything. And that's okay, And so throughout the process, I'll be the first one to tell you, I told him I was thinking he was dumb if he was to leave. I wanted him to stay. That was a selfish decision because I love being the DC where I was at, right? But he decided what was better for him and his family, and that's for him to decide. So I have no ill will towards him at all, right? Wish him the best of luck. We play him like every other SEC team, and we're going to both show up and spot the ball and play. So I talk to him on a regular basis, but no ill will at all, right? And really appreciative of how he treated me and my family. And then this created an unbelievable opportunity for me as well on top that I really wasn't looking for, but so appreciative to have.
All right, we'll go over here to our left in the front row, Dan.
Hey, Pete. Dan Wolken, Yahoo Sports, right over here.
Yep.
Sorry to pick at this again, but how would you fix tampering, or is it something that cannot be fixed in this environment?
All right, let me put it to you this way, okay? Like it'd be, so obviously you're a reporter, right? Would you quit your job before interviewing for another job or being offered another job? No, nobody would. But we have a portal that you can go in with a do not contact. I'm going to quit my job where I'm getting paid, and I'm going to go in saying I need a new job, but nobody can call me to interview. Like, what have we created? So we've created it on top of representation for these players, right? That it's their responsibility to make sure they get paid really well and they also have opportunities. So by design, it's put a lot of people in bad positions. And let's not act like recruiting in college football for the last 100 years is the most moral thing, right, that's ever been existed. I mean, like, what are we talking about here? So I'm really not going to get into my feelings, and I know how I've been educated to answer this question, right? Does that make sense? It's where we have a great compliance department, right, and all those type of things. But no, I mean, the model obviously has been broken, and I'm all for everybody being on the same playing field and doing the same things. I get it, but I think that's in any job, right? Like coaches, we're under contract. You don't think other ADs are calling us during the year? Same ones that are bitching about all this stuff are the same ones calling coaches, right, to come to other schools, right, and everything. So it's everywhere. It's in every profession. So I'm not saying I've got all the answers. I'm not saying that at all, right? Does that make sense? So we go within the rules of the program, right, and how the flow, just like when you're on the interstate and people are flying by you, what do you start doing? You're damn right you're going to get hit. Right? Does that make sense? In this profession, you're going to get fired, right? So I'm not saying that, but I think there are a lot of people that are doing an unbelievable job, Greg being one, right, to make sure that, all right, everything's catching up. College football is constantly changing, all those type of things. So hopefully we'll all, decide on what's fair for everybody.
That's Pete Golding again. There's a tampering issue he was accused of during the offseason. You can read up more on that. But again, the question there is the model broken? Sure it is. Pete Golding brings up some great points there. He was asked about tampering earlier in his session there in Tampa, deflected and just said, we have a great compliance department. They handle that. I'm not getting into it. But obviously you heard right there the follow-up question and his answer to that. Okay, we've got more to come. Keep it here. My goodness, time flies when you're having fun. So we're starting on Monday. We're going to really dig into college football. Producer Tony, every year he does his own top 25. We'll begin to look at the Sports IQ preseason top 25 teams. We'll hear more from the coaches as well, from the various pressers. It's fun. That's just some really interesting stuff that they're talking about there. Great guest coming up as well. We'll do a WNBA All-Star Game weekend breakdown with Stephen Prejean-Gardner. He's going to join us on Monday, friend of the show. Also, the Big Ten Media Days starting up on Tuesday. So at some point, we will Just as we heard from Greg Sankey, we will also see what Tony Petitti has to say, the other commissioner of the other power league right now in college football. Listen, make this a fantastic weekend. Appreciate you as always. Go check out our YouTube page and give us a follow there, Sports IQ LS. Have a fantastic weekend. We'll see you on Monday.
Thanks for listening to Sports IQ with Larry Smith, Monday through Friday. Continue the conversation at Sports IQ LS. We'll see you next time.